guys for coming. So my talk is about data labeling, and let's just get into it. So why we're gonna talk about data labeling? So Toloka, the company I work for, is providing different ML solutions. And one of them is data labeling. This is something we've been doing for over 10 years. You can see some brands we've been working with. And you can see here also some industries that we label data for. So you can see there is a lot of different industries, including search engines, and probably something that you are interested. We also label data for computer vision projects. So about me, I've been working in Toloka for a year now, almost. And previously, I work now as a data evangelist. But my background is in data science. This is what I have studied, and I've worked for several years as an NLP engineer, data scientist, etc. And I've been also involved in teaching and writing data science blogs. And this is the agenda I have for us today. So we're gonna talk why data annotation is so important and why MLOps should care. Then I'm gonna tell you how we annotate data at Toloka. And then most of this talk is gonna be about the food annotation project we have prepared for you. And we will have some time for a few questions afterwards. Let's say, why is it so important? So guys, how many of you work on computer vision project and maybe have to annotate some data sometimes? Okay, 2 people here. Maybe 10, 15 here. I don't know, maybe we have, so let's say maybe 20% at least of our audience here. And we can see this is a big problem. And if you look at this slide, actually, this is a slide that has been published in Forbes a few years ago. And basically it shows that a lot of people who work in data science, they spend a lot of time annotating, preparing, managing data set. That's why it's so important. When I work as a data scientist, when people ask me what I do, I would say, well, I build machine learning models. And this is probably not true because most of the time I was dealing with some sort of data. So this is the main reason. And why MLOps should care? This is another question here. And all of you probably have heard about Kaggle and machine learning competitions. And when you compete in Kaggle, you compete within a given data set. However, this is not true because if you build real machine learning products, AI products, you have to compete with the whole machine learning production. And basically, those people who can manage this process can build better AI models. And if you look at the traditional machine learning production pipeline, I have a very simplified version here, which includes training, validation, control in production. And if your model is not working, we retrain our model. But not a lot of people realize that a lot of steps in this machine learning pipeline involves humans, and not just a few humans. It usually involves human annotation on large scale. So I have a revised version here of this pipeline where I added a human icon everywhere in each step. So when you train your data set, your model, you need to annotate data. When you validate your model, the same happens. How do you know if your model is performing well in production? You need to get real labels to check it. And obviously, if you need to retrain your model, you need to label more data. So this was why MLOps should care. And another question is how you can annotate data. So there are several ways. And maybe if you've been working in machine learning, data science, sometimes you have been actually involved in the process yourself. Especially in small companies, maybe machine learning engineer, data scientist would sample some small data, annotated manually, write some instructions. But this is not how we do it really at Toloka. We use a method called crowdsourcing. And what does crowdsourcing mean? It means that we have a huge task, which is labeling a data set. We split this task to smaller components, and we distribute those smaller tasks across the crowd all over the world. And people can label data for ourselves. What is the advantage of this approach in comparison to the approach I have told you before? So first of all, speed, scalability, and cost effectiveness. The first two, you can imagine, because you have access to people all over the world, you can achieve speed and scalability. And the same happens in terms of price, because you can use crowd workers all over the world. You can actually choose adequate pricing. What this method does not involve by default is quality control. And this is actually what we try to provide with Toloka. It's a tool that helps us to set up the process and also set up these quality control devices on such products. And the best thing to learn is to actually look at real example. And that's why we have prepared a real example for you for this meetup. We want to enrich an existing food data set. This is a data set we took from Kaggle. This is some sample images you can see on this data set. You can see that it has been already annotated with some bounding boxes, but we wanted to add something. And we looked at the images in this data set. I want to show you a few more, so you have an idea how it looks like, a few more examples. And what we thought about it. The first thing we have noticed that a lot of images, all of them, are either of solid food or liquid food. So we thought, okay, maybe this is something we could annotate. Another thing that we noticed is that this is not an Instagram looking food data set. So some of the pictures there were quite appetizing and some not so. That's why we have decided to annotate this data with these two questions with Toloka, then version it, analyze it, and run experiments with ClearML, and then check it with deep checks. So let me tell you how the process started with Toloka. So we decided to design an interface and write the instructions. This is how the interface looked like. You can see that we have a picture. At the bottom, we have two questions. People, the first one is about if it's solid or liquid food. We also provided additional button other. And the second question is a subjective question, if the food is appetizing or not. I think in this data set collection, it was important. We wanted to include both, something that is objective, first question, and subjective, so we can actually analyze the results later. You can see also on the left-hand side how it can be set up using code in Toloka. And this is the interface we have used. I want to show you now the instructions. So if you actually can read the instructions, first of all, what you can see here, and this is very good practice if you design those things, they fit on one page. I think there's just something small there that did not fit, but they are very short and concise, but also include examples of what food should be annotated as solid, as liquid, or as other. Actually, I have noticed that in the data set, sometimes we had pictures of maybe a coffee and a cake. In this case, it would be both. Like, that's why I told my annotators they should choose other in this case. And the second question, much easier one, a subjective question. They just feel it's appetizing or not. So those were the instructions. And then the next step in such a project is selecting and training performance. And I already mentioned this, that we use crowdsourcing. and we have workers that are distributed all over the world. You can see them here on this picture in different time zones, and they speak different languages. So how do I decide who is gonna take part on my project? So we can, using Toloka, you can actually you can set up different filtering, for example, by some static properties, such as country, language, or by some computed properties, such as IP address, or by some specific task people actually have. My task was super simple, so I did not require too many skills. The only requirements to take part in my project was they should be English speaking. That's because I wrote my instructions in English. I did not translate it to any other languages. And I have prepared an exam for them that they had to pass. So this is how this exam looked like. It had 10 instances of pictures. Some of them, as you can see, were solid, some of them were liquid, and I also wanted to include edge case. And I think this is a very interesting example because these are results of this exam. And you can see that I think around 315, 16 people took part. And if you look at the first 9 entries, all people were scoring very well. They like 95% or above. But if you look at the last one, it has around 40-something% of accuracy on this one. This is because I have included an edge case. And this is the edge case I did include there. And basically, this is something I wanted to be annotated as other because it had liquid food and solid food. And not everybody read the instructions properly. So I caught a lot of people who did not do it, and basically I didn't want them to take part in my project, so I just did not allow them. Already we know who we allowed, but we still have to control quality on such a project. So how did we do this? I have used 3 different things to control quality. First of all was fast responses. I'm going to explain it later. Control tasks and overlap of 3. Overlap of 3 means that the same picture was sent not to one person, but 3 different annotators. So then I could somehow aggregate the results and basically be more confident about it. So basically this means that I wanted to exclude all the people. In Toloka, you can set up several tasks on one page. This means that a person, when he sees the project they are working, it does not see one picture, but see 10 pictures in this case. And like I figure out that if someone answers within 2-3 seconds, etc. Actually, I think I made it a bit bigger here. I don't want them to take part. I know that they are not properly looking at the picture and they are not really annotating it. So I just excluded them from the project. And another rule that I have set up is control tasks. And what are the control tasks? Those are already tasks that we know the answer to. So basically, I was very strict. I required my participants to be 100% correct on this one, just because it's a very, very simple task. And if you look at the next slide, this is the example of control tasks I have set up in Toloka. And you can see that, again, there is a variety of classes that were in my project. So I have some pictures that were annotated as other, as liquid, and as solid. And what were the results of such a food project data labeling annotation task? As you can see, we had gathered that we annotated 980 tasks. We started with 1,000, but I have reserved 10 tasks that were used for exam and 10 tasks that were used for controlling the quality during the process. You can see that the whole process costed around $6.50. And we can see that we have around 106 people that took part in this project that were annotating. As a result of this, we have gathered around 735 solid foods, around 200 liquids, and around 50 items that were labeled as other. We also had majority of food classified as appetizing, and around 350 items as not appetizing, also 10 other. But these are just, and this is just an overview, because the guys later on will dive deeper into the details of this annotation with hyper dataset and deep checks. This was not a fairy tale from the beginning. So I actually set up this project did not go so well in my first run. And if you show the next slide, I want to tell you why. First time I ran this project, I noticed that some people mislabeled my data. And those two pictures, for example, which are clearly liquid food, I wanted them to be labeled as liquid, but someone did put solid on it, and I did not catch it. And why? This is because I was initially a bit lazy, and this was my control tasks that I have used initially. So I used the same method, I used control tasks, but all my control tasks were consisting of solid food. What did it mean? That if my performers were actually choosing solid all the time, I was thinking they are doing it right, but even though when they were not, and they were mislabeling my data set. So the lessons learned here is that if you have control tasks, they should be equally distributed all over your classes that you have. So this is something very basic, but even I got caught on this one. And I had some other settings. Initially, I also used something called majority vote. I thought that if people, if 2 out of my 3 people label something as, let's say, solid, I would actually block the person that is actually giving contrary decision. But it did not work in practice so well. So I have changed this. I removed this majority vote rule and I replaced it with the exam I have told you before. In my case, the exam worked much better. And also initially, I had a control task at 75%. I changed it to 100. And this was, again, because I think it's just so simple. Even if someone makes a simple mistake, I think they should not be part of this project. Actually, this project has been set up using code. You can interact with Toloka by using Python SDK. And you can see here that we set up a Toloka client. And then once we have a Toloka client, we can set up everything via code. So you can set up instructions, you can set up interface. And I think the most important part, you can start, stop data labeling pipelines. So you can actually integrate it in your code. And the whole link to this project is existent. It is present in this Google Colab. So we have prepared a special notebook that you can actually, guys, use it. There is first gathering data with Toloka, and there is also staff with ClearML who follow up and deep checks that add to this notebook. So I would encourage you to check it out later. Let's summarize what we have talked today. So we started talking about importance of data and annotation of data and why MLOps should care. Then I told you about crowdsourcing and how we label data at Toloka. And most of this talk, we were talking about food annotation projects. If you want to try Toloka, we have a promo code for you. You can just register as a data requester. And once you register, you can put this code, Toloka for labeling, and you will get $30. And we also gonna have a tutorial where we're gonna give you a hands-on tutorial how to label a data set. So if you want to attend this, please scan this code and you will be able to register. And we also have a global community that you can join using this link. We talk about crowdsourcing data annotation and how it can be used in machine learning.